So 1 Kings 4. So last time we saw in chapter 3, at the end of chapter 3, remember the two prostitutes, the son, and I shared the gospel. And so Solomon is starting to reign, and he asks for wisdom. And I went over how we can ask for things, but like we always have a certain intention behind something. There's an intention for pretty much everything we do. Like literally, there's a reason, there's an intention, there's a purpose behind every action. And Solomon, it's pleasing to the Lord, because when he asks for wisdom, it's not because he wants to just personally succeed in life or something. It's not for selfish motives. It's because he, as a king, he wants to govern the people well. And, you know, if you think about the responsibility, it's one thing to be even just like a man, a husband, a father, and a wife and a mother. Especially as a husband, as a father, you know, biblically, the men are given such serious responsibility, and it can be even scary. I know godly men who, when they first got married, but especially more when they knew that their wife was pregnant, like some of them, I know one particular man, he's a godly man, he was like, being devastated would not be the best expression, but just he was like almost terrified, because he's about to become a dad, and he doesn't know much about being a dad. And so, I mean, being a leader, a head of a family is one thing, it's a big thing. But then when you're leading a whole country, that's even more, in a way, I think it can be incomparably scary that you're leading a whole country with millions of people. So Solomon asked for wisdom, discernment, to be able to just know things correctly. And it's totally understandable, reasonable, because all kinds of things can happen when you're leading a country. So yeah, God grants that, but along with wisdom, he grants other things like riches and honor, because of the fact that Solomon didn't ask for other things. So now chapter 4, when you're king over Israel, there of course going to be officials. You know, it's not like this one ruler dictatorship of, even when you're a dictator, you have officials. So how much more when you have a kingdom and you appoint officials? So a list of names. There's the priest side. There's the kind of more religious side. And then there are other officials. And then, so verse 7, and Solomon had 12 governors over all Israel. So just that part, who provided food for the king and his household. So, and then verse 20 now. Judah and Israel were as numerous as the sand by the sea in multitude, eating and drinking and rejoicing. So Solomon reigned over all kingdoms, from the river to the land of the Philistines, as far as the border of Egypt. They brought tribute and served Solomon all the days of his life. So it says, verse 20-21, when you read this, I know it's very easy to just kind of read it and overlook it, not think much about it. But anything come to your mind when you read verse 20-21? So in another Bible study, I'm going over the issue of faith, and we've gone over Abraham, his whole life. And the promise that God gave was descendants and land and descendants, over and over again. Two primary promises. God said to Abraham 1,000 years earlier, 1,000 years earlier, God said, I will make nations out of you. I'm going to change your name from Abram to Abraham, from exalted father to father of many, the name change, because nations will come out of you, and your descendants are going to be like the stars in the sky. It's going to be like the sand on the seashore. God promised that 1,000 years earlier. And so when you have that background, when you read verse 20, Judah and Israel were as numerous as the sand by the sea in multitude, eating and drinking and rejoicing. My guess is that this time period was where Israel was most prosperous. Well, not only prosperous, that we know for sure pretty much, but even when it comes to number of people, like when you kind of read a little bit, you know that there's peace everywhere we're going to see. And so there's no need for war because the enemies are subdued. And the moment I say that, something should come to your mind. Whether you have your eschatology as millennial kingdom or in the future when Christ reigns as king, it's going to be like that, where there's no enemy and all enemies are subdued. And just to tell you in advance, Solomon, of course, he's a type of Christ. We saw that all the way from 2 Samuel 7, when God makes the Davidic covenant. The whole seed thing, your seed, double fulfillment of Solomon, but then Christ, who will build a house for God. But during this time, Solomon's time, like it says, they were as numerous as the sand by the sea in multitude. And so with no war, there's no death. And the extent of the land, like verse 21, so Solomon reigned over all kingdoms from the river of the land of the Philistines as far as the border of Egypt. To try to kind of picture that, they brought tribute and served Solomon all the days of his life. So, like I said, enemies are subdued. There's no need for war because, Israel is the most, powerful, at least in this region. It's a total picture of the future. And then 22, look at this. Now Solomon's provision for one day was 30 cores of wheat, fine flour, 60 cores of meal, 10 fatted oxen, 20 oxen from the pastures, and 100 sheep, besides deer, gazelles, roebucks, and fatted fowl. Okay, so this can't be talking about, Solomon himself. No human being can eat even one whole animal. You would probably die if you force yourself like that. So the fact that 10 fatted oxen and, all this amount, my guess is that this is the whole country, because this is, it says Solomon's provision for one day, each day was this much. So I think it has to be talking about the whole country. And even for a country, this is a large amount. As you might know, if you kill one animal, you get a lot of meat. Well, look at the list. 10 fatted oxen, and that's not all. 20 oxen from the pastures and 100 sheep, besides deer, and then there's more. So I think this has to be talking about the whole country. And even for a country, this is a good amount. So, I know some of us here, wink wink, some of us here really like food. And, God has creation as a teaching tool. Even something as simple as food and the pleasure from food. I know I bring this up a lot. Sorry, but in a way I'm not sorry because this is a prevalent religion all around us, the pagan religion of evolution. But if stardust mutated for gazillions of years, why do these random bags of stardust that mutated over gazillions of years, why would they get pleasure from eating food? By chance, these sheep and oxen, cows, all these animals mutated over gazillions of years. But why is it that there's one random bag of molecule, human beings, Homo sapiens, that eat these animals and it's pleasurable, it tastes good? Somebody yesterday gave me some pork. Wink, wink. And they tasted good. Thank you. Why does it taste good? Why does a bag of chemicals over here eat another bag of chemicals that mutated over gazillions of years over here, mutated by chance? Why does it taste good? By chance? And it's not like just meat, but the vegetables and, the greens, the onions and the garlic, by chance, remember, by chance, all these things, all over the place, herbs and vegetables and meat and bread and all this stuff, by chance, mushrooms and gazillions of different kinds of foods. So this is why the Bible says there's no excuse about God. There's no excuse about God's design. It's plain, beyond bogus, comical foolishness to believe this pagan religion that it's just random chance mutation over gazillions of years, and so they happen to just taste good. And they give the exact nutrients that our body needs. Some of you guys might know, I'm into nutrition. It's fascinating. Our bodies, our organs, hormones, intestine, the exact food, have this vitamin, these vitamins, these minerals, the exact things that our body needs. I don't think it's by chance. Okay? It's just plain comical jokiness. So, God designed this world to be a teaching tool where we know the pleasure of food, like we see right here. And so, it gives us a little taste of the future, when one day there's going to be a grand feast. So like, I can go to many passages, but one day when Jesus subdues all the enemies and everything's completed, it speaks about how like God's people are going to come from the east and west and north and south. I'll just read a passage real quick. When you see, this is like Luke 13:28, when you see Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and all the prophets in the kingdom of God, and you guys thrown out, the unbelievers thrown out, they will come from the east and west and from the north and south and recline in the kingdom of God. Now, when it says recline, we went over this in John 13. Reclining is when you're laid on your front. It's kind of an interesting way to eat, but you're basically at a table, and it's indicating a feast. So guys, just get this, okay? You guys know the pleasure of like a wonderful dinner table, okay? Whatever restaurant you know of, okay? Some of you guys, you go to restaurants and you really love food, okay? Well, in the new kingdom, when everything's completed, when we're having a feast with God, it's going to be way, 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 way better. It's not going to compare. The food that's kind of contaminated, today that we have, where in this fallen world, it's not going to compare to the feast that God prepares for his people. Remember when we were going over 2 Samuel chapter 9 with Mephibosheth, remember David kindly treats Mephibosheth, who was lame in his feet, remember that? And I gave the gospel there. It says that one of the things that Mephibosheth got was he got to eat at the king's table. Remember, I went over that. One day, as God's children, as God's princes and princesses, we will feast at God's table with God. Just like a king eating with his children at a table. That's what's going to happen. So Solomon is a total picture of Christ in many ways. Anything come to your mind about the things things in common between Solomon and Christ? Anything come to your mind?
Something got to do with the temple.
Yes, there's temple, but wisdom. So there's wisdom, there's the temple building, there's the whole kingdom prosperity. All this feast that's going to happen. The enemies are subdued. Just like Solomon's time, the enemies are subdued. There's peace all around. Hey guys, how often do you hear about conflicts and issues between countries? Okay, right now, there's a lot of talk about Russia and China and US and other nations all around. All throughout history, there has been war, right? Battlefield, army, military, air force, all around. There has been, since the fall of mankind, it started with smaller groups of people, but there's always going to be conflict. Many times, I can go into this a lot, but just one of the desires of people when you ask about, the world and peace and, there's UN and all that stuff, everyone recognizes there's a serious problem in the world between individuals, between countries, between families, all these things. But look at verse 24. For Solomon, he had dominion over all the region on this side of the river from Tifsa even to Gaza, namely over all the kings on this side of the river. And he had peace on every side all around him. And Judah and Israel dwelt safely, each man under his vine and his fig tree, from Dan as far as Beersheba, all the days of Solomon. So this is a perfect picture again of Christ when he's king. All enemies will be subdued. There's no need for war. The king is reigning. And the whole issue of, war may go on, World War III, on and on, nuclear war, there's a lot of prayer going on right now in Taiwan. A lot of Christians, they're like, I think, praying and fasting and things like that because of China and like the possibility of a war going on sometime. That's going to be the case in this life for now until Jesus comes back. One of the longing desires of people is peace, no conflict. Well, that's coming when the Lord comes with his kingdom. And 26, Solomon had 40,000 stalls of horses for his chariots, 12,000 horsemen, and these governors, each man in his month, provided food for King Solomon and all who came to King Solomon's table. There was no lack in their supply. Again, when I read that, I just can't not think of Christ and his reigning. There's going to be no lack, okay? They also brought barley and straw for the proper place, for the horses and steeds, each man according to his charge. So, as you know, when you have so many animals for war and for eating and all that, you need a lot of food for them too. But even that, it goes into that detail that there was no lack, even for that. When you have these thousands of horses and animals involved in war, you need a lot of food. But there's such supply that comes in. So yeah, and in 29, and God gave Solomon wisdom and exceeding great understanding and largeness of heart like the sand on the seashore. That's Christ. Thus Solomon's wisdom excelled the wisdom of all the men of the East and all the wisdom of Egypt. For he was wiser than all men, than Ethan, this person, that person, on, and his fame was in all the surrounding nations. His fame, hallelujah, this is Christ. I know this is true right here, this record is true, but if you know Christ is everything, that everything points to Christ, you can notice things. You can recognize certain things when you just read. So Solomon's fame was in all the surrounding nations. Well, Christ's fame will be in all the world. Like nobody, of course. There's no rival. There's no one that compares. Even though today Jesus' name is blasphemed by the pagans because Satan knows who Jesus is, they don't do that with Buddha. They don't do that with Muhammad or Allah, whatever. But Jesus Christ, his holy name, the world proves the Bible to be true by doing what they do. But one day, all those who blasphemed his name, unless they repented and got saved, they'll be cast into the lake of fire as the enemies of God. And Christ's name will be exalted, just like right here. His fame was in all the surrounding nations. Well, Christ's fame will be in all the world, all the universe. And every knee will bow and every tongue will confess that Jesus Christ is Lord, to the glory of God the Father. Yeah, Satan knows that verse right there in Philippians 2. He knows that's going to be fulfilled. 32, he spoke 3,000 proverbs, and the songs were 1,005, and he spoke of trees, cedar tree of Lebanon, and on, birds, fish, everything, all these things. Solomon's great wisdom, that's Christ. Now, chapter 5, now Hiram, king of Tyre, sent his servants to Solomon because he heard that they had anointed him king in place of his father, for Hiram had always loved David. Then Solomon sent to Hiram, saying, "You know how my father David could not build a house for the name of Yahweh his God because of the wars which were fought against him on every side, until the Lord Yahweh put his foes under the soles of his feet." So this is Solomon sending either a letter or a messenger to Hiram saying, my father David, he wasn't able to build a house for our God, but hey, I am doing it. So basically asking for provision. Now therefore, verse 6, command that they cut down cedars for me from Lebanon. So Lebanon was known for the cedar trees, for the good trees that they had. And my servants will be with your servants, and I will pay you wages for your servants according to whatever you say. For you know that there is none among us who has skill to cut timber like the Sidonians. So, the supply, of course, you need supply to build this house for God. And so that supplied, and then chapter 6, and it came to pass in the 480th year after the sons of Israel had come out of the land of Egypt. So it had been close to 500 years since the rescue, the whole salvation of God of Israel during Moses' time. So it had been about 500 years since Moses' time. So Moses was around 1500 BC. David and Solomon was around 1000 BC. So that's kind of easy to remember, right? 1500, 1000. And then Abraham was around 2000 BC. So you see how it's so easy to remember these numbers? I might test you in the future. I'm half kidding. 2000, 1500, 1000. Very well known people of God. So this is the time period, and so this is where in the month of Ziv, which is the second month, that Solomon began to build the house of Yahweh. So we have these chapters because, of course, this is so significant. It's about building God a house. And so, this image here, as you can see, now this is, of course, not it. This is just a comparison. So this is during Moses' time. It was a small tent. Pretty, how do you describe this? Not that amazing. But Solomon, so here we have Solomon's temple. As you saw, compared to the earlier one, it's a whole building. So remember the earlier one, it was a tent. But this is a building. It's more permanent, right? That's the difference. Tent is something that you can move around. So remember, it makes sense. During Moses' time, it was a tent because they move around all the time in the wilderness. Remember, for 40 years in the wilderness? So you need a tent. You can't have a building like this out in the desert. So they're settled in Jerusalem. And Solomon is building this. And so a lot of materials needed. And it just goes into the detail. You can read all the detail of the temple. Like verse 2. Now the house which King Solomon built for Yahweh, its length was 60 cubits, width 20 cubits, and then height 30 cubits. And then the vestibule in front of the sanctuary of the house, 20 cubits long, etc. All this length and stuff. That's how we can make this illustration. We can have it because all this detail is recorded. And then verse 9, so Solomon, he built the temple and finished it, and he paneled the temple with beams and boards of cedar, and he built side chambers against the entire temple, each 5 cubits high. They were attached to the temple with cedar beams. Then the word of Yahweh came to Solomon, saying, concerning this temple which you are building, if you walk in my statutes, execute my judgments, keep my commandments, and walk in them, then I will perform my word with you, which I spoke to your father David, and I will dwell among the sons of Israel, and I will not forsake my people Israel. So I have this highlighted, I have this marked, okay? Verse 11 verse 12 and 13, I have it kind of marked, because these are important words. So guys, what's the purpose of the temple? What's the whole purpose? Well, the central purpose is the presence of God. This Holy of Holies area, there's the whole temple here. The whole purpose of it is this right here. This Ark of the Covenant. So it is said that God dwells between the cherubim. And so these two kind of half animal looking, half man looking, these two are called cherubs, or the plural is cherubim. And many times in the Bible you read in the Old Testament about God dwells between the cherubim. So between the two cherubim, the Ark of the Covenant represents God's presence. It's there. And while, this illustration, it kind of has the building opened up. It's closed. No one sees the inside. Only the priests get to go in. The common people wouldn't even be in this area. I mean, the common people may go up to here, but maybe not even here. Only the priests go up to, this area, offering animal sacrifices here, and they wash and stuff. and they go inside, and the priests, there's the lampstands, and there's showbread. There's showbread here, remember? David ate the showbread. The priests go up to here, and then only the priests, once a year, they go inside this area, Leviticus 16, the Day of Atonement, once a year. But other than that, even the priests only go up to here, only go up to this area. But yeah, the presence of God is the sole reason, in a way. Well, not the sole reason, but it's the main reason for the temple. And that's why chapter 6, verse 11 through 13, this is important. God said to Solomon, concerning this temple which you are building, if, conditional, if you walk in my statutes, execute my judgments, keep all my commandments, and walk in them, then I will perform my word. And what's the word? I will, verse 13, dwell among the sons of Israel. God's presence. I will dwell among the sons of Israel, and I will not forsake my people Israel. That's the whole issue. So it's implied, if you don't keep my covenant, if you don't keep my law, the whole law between me and Israel, the nation, the covenant, old covenant, Mosaic covenant, well, if you as king don't lead the country the right way, if you don't keep the law right, then it's implied, I will not dwell among the sons of Israel, and I will forsake you, because you're breaking the covenant. Not me, you're breaking it, so it's going to be broken, and you're going to be forsaken. And do you know what happens? You should know this history. It's pretty, like, kind of, not only well known, it's pretty basic in a way. You should know this history. But eventually, Israel, they, all throughout the history, they're pretty unfaithful overall. During Solomon's time, they're probably doing a little better, but for most of its history, they're breaking the law, they're breaking the covenant, they're serving idols. And we know after Solomon, because Solomon himself, we're going to see he apostatizes, he becomes paganized because of the foreign women. He multiplied, his wives, and he apostatizes. And so God, he divides the kingdom to northern Israel and southern Judah. And southern Judah is like the more connected to God's side. Northern Israel was more apostate, was more unfaithful. But northern Israel is destroyed by Assyria in 722 BC. And then southern Judah in 586 BC by Babylon. God uses Babylon to basically, eventually this whole temple, it's actually destroyed. And the Ark of the Covenant gets, well, we don't know for sure, but according to tradition, Jeremiah did hide the Ark of the Covenant, but basically it's lost in a way. It's lost. And the whole temple is absolutely destroyed. That happens. So I'm kind of telling you in advance, but even Solomon ends up apostatizing. And so God's presence, the very purpose of the temple, it's lost. But yeah, so Solomon 14 built the temple and finished it. And all these things. And if you look at 19, verse 19, and he prepared the inner sanctuary inside the temple. So inner sanctuary, what's that? This is, called the Holy of Holies. So he prepared the inner sanctuary inside the temple to do what? To set the Ark of the Covenant of Yahweh there. As I already told you, the Ark of the Covenant. The whole purpose of the temple is the Ark of the Covenant. The main purpose, God's presence. And the inner sanctuary, this Holy of Holies, was 20 cubits long, 20 cubits wide, and 20 cubits high. So it was a square right here. This is a square. Or a cube, I should say. He overlaid it with pure gold and overlaid the altar of cedar. So it's wood is used, but then it's overlaid with pure gold. So Solomon overlaid the inside of the temple with pure gold. He stretched gold chains across the front of the inner sanctuary and overlaid it with gold. So this would have been just magnificent. I mean, I would have liked to live here. I'm kidding. I'm not really interested in gold, but it would have looked just amazing. It's all gold. And so, yeah, just absolutely marvelous. So guys, all these point to the future, guys. It was absolutely beyond magnificent during this time, but one day in the future, I mean, there's just so much you can go into, but one day in the future, God's people make up the temple of God, the presence of God, the house of God. I went over this before. And we will enjoy the full presence of God. And there's going to be the whole feast, incomparable, and the full presence of God. And there's not going to be any negative possibility of anything negative, like God's presence leaving anymore. It's going to be just beyond imagination. And if you look at the end of chapter 6, so so 637, in the 4th year, the foundation of the house of Yahweh was laid in the month of Ziv. And in the 11th year, in the month of Bol, which is the 8th month, the house was finished in all its details according to all its plans. So it was 7 years in building it. 7 years and 6 months, I think. Yeah, Ziv, which is the 2nd month. So yeah, 7.5 years. But then you see something that's a little, chapter 7, verse 1. Anything noted here? Anything that stands out? Anything that's noticeable? But Solomon took 13 years to build his own house. So what does that indicate? So when it comes to God's house, Solomon took 7.5 years. When it comes to his own house, he took 13 years. He took almost twice. Why do you think he took so long, longer like that? I mean, if it took 7.5 years to build God's temple, his house, if you're God-centered and not self-centered, you wouldn't take so much longer to build your own house. So here and there, you'll see hints of Solomon's shortcomings, some negative things of Solomon. As a matter of fact, I didn't go over it, but even when you look at like chapter 4, verse 26, where it said Solomon had 40,000 stalls of horses. Remember when we went over this, having all these horses, 12,000 horsemen? The thing is, God said, don't multiply horses. He's in Deuteronomy 17 for the kings, because the tendency is to rely on your military power, to rely on your manpower, the physical things. So God said in Deuteronomy 17:16, the king, he shall not multiply horses for himself, nor cause the people to return to Egypt to multiply horses. But Solomon, he pretty much did. So you see those hints that indicate that there, he falls short. He has some negative things. And so chapter 7, there's more details of all these things. So like you see bronze pillars for the temple. So like you see bronze pillars, if you look at verse 15, so chapter 7, verse 15, 2 pillars of bronze. So you see here about bronze pillar. So of course there's another pillar on this side, two pillars. Name was like Jachin or something, and then Boaz. And then the sea and the oxen, and then carts and labors, and then furnishings in the temple. So all these things. And then finally, chapter 8. Okay, at the end of chapter 7, so all the work that Solomon had done, verse 51, for the house of Yahweh was finished. And Solomon brought in the things which his father David had dedicated, the silver and the gold and the furnishings. He put them in the treasuries of the house of Yahweh. And then chapter 8, now Solomon assembled the elders of Israel and all the heads of the tribes, the chief fathers of the sons of Israel, to King Solomon in Jerusalem, that they might bring up, okay, here's where the thing now goes on, that they might bring up the ark of the covenant of Yahweh from the city of David, which is Zion. This is the moment that they had been doing everything for. This is the nervous time. You know, like when people buy houses or something, especially when it's like a new house that's built. Some of us know what this is like. I personally don't, but you know, my family member, they bought a new house a few years ago, and I'm sure it was very nervous. So they hear about the construction going on, the house is being built, and then finally it gets finished, and the day comes where you're going to move in. So what's the purpose of the house? Well, to house people, right? That's the purpose. So the building's completed, and you finally are checking out the house, and then you start moving in. It's very exciting. Ooh, yay, this nice house that's new you go into. Well, finally, this has been completed, and they're bringing in the Ark of God, the presence of God. So, verse 2, therefore all the men of Israel assembled with King Solomon at the feast in the month of Atanim. So this month is the 7th month, and the feast is the Feast of Tabernacles. Now, which is the Feast of Tabernacles? How many feasts are there, and which one is this? Well, there are 7 feasts. 7 is the number of perfection completion, and the Feast of Tabernacles is the last one. You know, starting, the first one is Passover, unleavened bread, and Feast of First Fruits and all that, and then it goes Feast of Weeks, and then Day of Atonement, or New Moon, or maybe, and then Day of Atonement, and then there's finally the last one is Feast of Tabernacles. It's interesting that it's this feast where God's presence goes into his house, his dwelling place. Guys, I may have told you before, what is this Feast of Tabernacles about? Well, I can't go into too much because our time is short, but number one, it's the last feast, as I've been saying, and this is also called the Feast of Ingathering, I think, where by fall, this is like fall time. You know, we're not as familiar with like farming and stuff, but by the fall time, you're gathering in all the crops and everything, all the sowing and planting and harvesting that you've done. Now it's coming to completion, and that is a picture of Jesus, the Christ, him gathering all the harvest. It's incredible. So you guys know the Feast of Weeks is also called Pentecost. That's when Jesus' gathering started to gather God's people into the kingdom, gathering them to himself. Remember Acts chapter 2? It starts. Well, the last feast, Feast of Tabernacles, you celebrate it with the whole ingathering of everything. All the harvest is now gathered in. That is Christ gathering all of his people, the last Christian, the last elect. When the final one is gathered in, the temple of God is completed. I went over this. And now the presence of God is coming to his temple. It's coming to the earth. Absolutely amazing. Are you getting these connections? It is just astounding. The Word of God, the Bible, that the pagans mock and don't understand. They don't know any of this. So absolute amazing fulfillments. So guys, just look at all this. Look at how everything points to Christ and the future kingdom. Just like Solomon, he got wisdom as king to govern the people, Christ. He had the most amazing prosperity all over the place and peace all around, Christ and his kingdom. And the whole amazing feast and all the enjoyment and celebration, Christ, the future kingdom. And just like Solomon completed the temple and is dedicating the temple, and then now the Ark of God comes into the temple, Jesus the Christ, when he comes back, he's going to subdue all his enemies, 1 Corinthians 15, and he's going to turn the kingdom of God over to the Father, And when there is complete fulfillment and completion of the temple of God, God is going to come down and he's going to dwell with his people. With the last feast being completed, the last elect, the last piece of the house of God completed, the presence of God will come and we will enjoy God's presence forever. So it is just incredible. It's beyond incredible. It's just astounding. It's there are no words. And so that will continue on for future eternity, guys. And that is what we look forward to. Look at these incredible parallels. The feast, the house of God, the temple, the king, prophecy, covenant with David, your seed is going to build a house for me. It's just amazing. So, unless there are any questions or anything, I'll pray and yeah. Lord God, the more we come to see your word, how we know this is of you, that man can't come up with these things. Man's not able to, with the whole history behind it. Your covenant with Abraham, his seed, his descendants, and the land, and then your covenant with David, and then the new covenant. All these pictures and hints, the types of Christ, all over your word, the Hebrew Bible, and the fulfillment of it in Christ, your Son, the Son of God. Lord God, what words, Lord, to describe this magnificence? It's indescribable. The completion of the 7 feasts, the fulfillment in Christ, how every single one of them pointed to Christ. Lord, we have this past and we are living in the present and we look forward to the future where all these things will be completed. Lord, how your people look forward to your return, Jesus, where you will come down from the sky and you will sit as king in your kingdom, all enemies subdued under you, and your people getting to make up the temple of God and enjoy your presence and enjoy the amazing feasts that you will have for your people. Indescribable, incomparable. Lord God, be worshipped by your people. May your people come to know these things. But Lord, as the greater Solomon with greater wisdom, be exalted, be recognized, be made known, and may these truths go out to your people. And may we marvel at your amazing brilliance as we gather the building blocks for your temple with evangelism. Lord, be glorified in all this. In Jesus' name. Amen.